Orange County 911, this is Rob.
Hi, I think I just heard gunshots outside.
Okay. How many shots did you hear?
Over.
Orange County 911, this is
Scream and then 3 shots. Sound like a young woman.
Her name was Eve Carson, and her murder sent shockwaves through the community, leaving everyone wondering how such a heinous crime could happen to someone so innocent. The details of her death, including multiple gunshots, a lifeless body left on the deserted road, and a blood trail leading to the unknown killer. It was a night that would haunt the town of Chapel Hill forever. The night when the life of a young, vibrant student, loved and admired by all, was brutally taken away. Eve Carson wasn't just an ordinary student, she was a force to be reckoned with. Her bright smile, positive energy, and unwavering dedication to service and leadership touched the lives of everyone she met. From the moment she arrived at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, it was clear that Eve was destined for greatness. As the recipient of the prestigious Moorhead Scholarship, she'd already proven herself to be a standout student with a passion for both science and political science. But Eve wasn't content with just excelling academically. She wanted to make a real difference in the world, and she wasn't afraid to put in the hard work to make it happen. Later on, she demonstrated her unwavering devotion to fostering children's growth and learning by becoming a science teacher and worked with organizations that helped empower young women. You could tell she loved giving back to the world and would spend weeks participating in volunteer work. Her passion for service and leadership was infectious, and it inspired others to join her in making a difference. It's hard to fathom why a beacon of light in the world was mercilessly taken away.
Orange County 911, this is Rob.
Hi, I think I just heard gunshots outside.
Okay. How many shots did you hear?
Over.
You heard 4?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Did you see anyone by chance?
No, I mean, I was laying awake in bed.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right, you want to speak to an officer about this?
Well, I don't know.
Orange County 911, this is
Scream and then 3 shots. Sound like a young woman.
Okay, you said you heard gunshots?
3 gunshots.
How long ago did this happen?
5 seconds.
And you said you heard a female scream?
3 times, yeah.
Did anything like this ever happen before?
I've heard gunshots before. I don't think I've heard screaming.
It was a chilly and quiet morning on March 5th, 2008, in the Hillcrest Circle neighborhood, situated to the northeast of Chapel Hill and UNC. At around 5 a.m., a local resident was woken up by a single gunshot. The sound was so loud that it echoed through the entire neighborhood. As if that wasn't terrifying enough, a girl's scream followed the gunshot. The resident heard it coming from somewhere beyond the tree line and felt chills run down their spine. Suddenly, 3 more gunshots rang out in quick succession. It was a sound that no one would forget for a long time. The resident knew that something terrible had happened, but was too afraid to investigate. What if the shooter was still out there, lurking in the shadows? What if they became the next victim? They quickly dialed 911, and the officers who responded to the call were met with a stomach-churning scene. As they made their way toward the source of the gunshots, they found the body of a young woman lying in the middle of the road. She appeared to be in her early 20s, but no personally identifiable information was discovered at the scene, making it difficult to determine who she was. It was possible that the killing was motivated by robbery, as there were no signs of a struggle or a motive for murder. The young woman had been shot multiple times with a handgun, at a height of 5 feet 5 inches, and weighed about 138 pounds, or 60 kilograms. She was petite in stature, and given her age, it was highly likely that she was a student. Was she a local student, or was she visiting from out of town? There were so many unanswered questions. As the news of the murder spread across Chapel Hill, it became clear that something terrible had happened. It was as if the entire community was in shock. Everyone was on edge, wondering if they were next. Students who had gone out the previous night and had not returned home were feared to be the victim of this senseless crime. It wasn't until several students notified the overnight police about their missing roommate that the pieces began to fall into place. The investigation had revealed that Eve's day had started like any other. She had gone to class, studied in the library, and returned to her apartment. But as the night grew darker, the events leading up to her murder remained shrouded in mystery. Rumors began to spread that she had been at a party with friends, but no one could confirm this. She had been leaving a bar with a group of strangers, while others claimed she had gone on a date with someone she had met online. The police were stumped. They interviewed her friends, classmates, and professors, but no one could provide a solid lead. It was as if Eve had vanished into thin air. The only clue they had was her car, which was found abandoned in a parking lot a few miles away from her apartment. The vehicle had been wiped clean of fingerprints, and there was no sign of a struggle. It was as if the car had been placed there intentionally to throw off the investigation. As the days went by, the community grew increasingly anxious. No one felt safe anymore, and everyone was on edge. The police worked around the clock, pursuing every lead and following every tip, but they were getting nowhere. It was as if Eve's killer had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. The community was gripped with fear and anxiety as rumors began to swirl about what could have happened to Eve. But as the days passed and the investigation progressed, a tragic story began to emerge. It turned out that Eve had been the victim of a senseless and brutal crime. Two young men, Demario Atwater and Lawrence Lovett, had spotted her walking towards her car early in the morning of March 5, 2008. They had pushed their way into her car, with Lovett driving and Atwater riding in the back seat. They dragged Eve into the back seat, where Atwater held a gun to her head. Eve was threatened, which led to several ATMs to be robbed. She was robbed of $700 at an ATM in University Mall at 3:55 a.m. They also tried to take money from her at an ATM in Durham, but were unsuccessful. During this horrific ordeal, Eve attempted to reason with her tormentors, begging for her life and trying to tell them they could take whatever they wanted and that they didn't have to kill her. But because she had already seen their faces, Lovett and Atwater had already made the decision. They were going to kill her. They took her to a heavily forested neighborhood about a mile from UNC to murder her. Finally realizing her fate and losing all hope, Eve asked them to pray with her. Eve had 5 shots fired at her. A .25 caliber handgun first shot her in the right shoulder, right upper arm, right buttock, and right cheek. The cruelest part was that Eve was still conscious and breathing after being shot with the handgun, according to blood found in her lungs during the autopsy. Her 5th and fatal shot came from a sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun. It passed through her right hand and into her brain, indicating that she tried to shield herself. According to a forensic psychologist and criminal profiler, Eve's shooting proved to be a, quote, complete disregard for another person. Both Atwater and Lovett had extensive criminal records. Lovett had been involved in drug crimes, larceny, breaking and entering, and felony firearm possession. The North Carolina Court of Appeals stated in a 2014 opinion that Lovett had a, quote, lengthy juvenile record that exhibits a pattern of escalation of criminal activity. Atwater had earlier been found guilty of a number of offenses, including marijuana possession with intent to sell, criminal trespass, robbery, and assault. He was sentenced to 3 years probation in February 2005 after being found guilty of breaking into a house. The police officer investigating a burglary seized a handgun from him in June 2006. Atwater pleaded guilty to having a weapon in his possession while on probation and received additional probation time. It was clear these two were no innocent boys, and this time they took it way too far. Demario James Atwater, 24, stood before the court, his fate hanging in the balance. He had managed to avoid the ultimate punishment, the death penalty, by pleading guilty to 5 federal charges related to the March 2008 slaying of Eve Carson. The charges included kidnapping and carjacking resulting in death, a heinous crime. Atwater looked straight at Carson's parents, who sat stoically in the courtroom. He apologized for his actions, a hollow gesture that could never bring back their daughter. The parents refused to comment, their silence a testament to their grief and pain. The verdict was delivered, and Atwater was required to make a staggering $212,947.10 in restitution and undergo treatment for drug abuse. His punishment was severe, but not enough for a crime of this magnitude. The court could not bring Eve back, but it would make sure that Atwater paid for his actions. In May, Atwater's fate was sealed when he pleaded guilty to 4 state charges, including first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison for murder, a fitting punishment for taking the life of a young woman who had so much to offer the world. In addition, he received a concurrent sentence of 23 to 29 years for armed robbery, kidnapping, and possession of firearms. Lovett, the other suspect in the case, was charged with first-degree murder and federal charges, but he escaped the death penalty because he was a minor at the time of the crime. The family of Eve Carson released a statement at Atwater's sentencing, expressing their relief that he had been brought to justice. Quote, "A life sentence honors Eve's love of life and all people," the statement read. The family chose not to testify in court, but their attorney, Wade Smith, read a statement on their behalf. Quote, "The selfishness of taking another's life is incomprehensible, and this coward is unaddressable," Smith said, his voice ringing with emotion. The words echoed through the courtroom, a reminder that justice had been served, but the wound of Eve's loss would never fully heal. Eve Carson's legacy lives on through the Eve Carson Scholarship Fund and the annual Eve Carson Memorial 5K for Education. Her tragic death sparked a movement towards education and literacy, as her memory inspires countless individuals to strive for academic success and give back to their communities. The race, now in its 13th year, has become a symbol of hope and resilience, bringing together thousands to honor Eve's memory and continue her mission of making education accessible to all. The memory of Eve Carson lives on through the hearts and minds of those who knew her. Her tragic death has become a symbol of hope and strength for the community. What details of this case stick out to you? Comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories.